What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 455 of AskGSM for Wednesday, August 17th, 2022. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you haven't already, please check out my exclusive interview. Went up on Sunday here on the channel with two-time WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels, talking all about the DX doc that went up on A&E on Sunday and his current involvement with NXT, the main roster, Triple H taking over WWE, and a lot more. This coming Friday here on the channel, dropping my interview with Edge, also talking his A&E documentary airing on Sunday, his current run in WWE, turning heel, turning face. It was a really cool conversation. You're going to learn all about that and a lot more in that interview when it drops on Friday here on the channel in audio form, in article form over on Bleacher Report. So, cheap plug there. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. First from Micah Does It from YouTube. Got two questions this week. First one being, now that Hit Row is returned and they can't have Swerve in the group, who do you think can be their leader, or do they just have the group be them three? I think it's fine with just Top Dollar, Ashanti the Adonis, and B-Fab, honestly. On paper, I was thinking, yeah, it's a little weird to not have that centerpiece, which is what Swerve was to the group for as long as he was with them. And I originally thought it was his group. Yeah, from a storyline standpoint, it was his group. In reality, Top Dollar mentioned on Saturday's Busted Open Radio that it was actually their idea. They were already doing, Hit Row and pitching it to Triple H, and it was their idea for a faction. Triple H was the one who threw Swerve in there. It ended up being a great idea. The group worked perfectly together. Unfortunately, Swerve is now in AEW. And I say unfortunately, not unfortunately for him. He's won half of the tag team champions. He's done well. He's had a good run so far. Would I prefer to see him back in WWE with Hit Row? Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the Keith Lee tag team. They work perfectly together as partners, but, I do feel like his ceiling is higher than being a tag team guy. Now, that might sound ironic as Hit Row is a faction, but I don't think he and Top Dollar would be going after tag team gold. I honestly think he would be more in the mid-card. Top Dollar and Ashanti the Adonis work perfectly as a tag team. That is the right role for both men right now. Maybe Top Dollar can be more than that at some point. I'm not too sure. We haven't really seen too much of what he can do in the ring. For now, they work well as a tag team. It was always going to be a tag team with B-Fab as a manager. Like I said, Triple H was the one who threw in Swerve and made it a whole faction. I think it does work better as a faction, but if you don't have Swerve, you can't have Swerve anytime soon, if ever again. Just doing them three, the OG3 as they call themselves, putting them in the tag team ranks, which adds another tag team to WWE's depleted tag team division, and making B-Fab their manager and hopefully not making her wrestle. She was not very good in NXT. She could have used more time in the ring over there. Then I think that's perfectly fine. And Swerve is doing his thing in AEW, so I don't think they need a leader. A lot of people last year, this year, recently have said, Carmelo Hayes, for example, would be perfect with Hit Row. I can kind of see it. I think Carmelo is such a star on his own, and the Trick Williams pairing has really grown on me. They work well together. Trick has really gotten a lot better in the ring, on the mic, as a character, as a hype man for Carmelo. There's no reason to break that up and put Carmelo as the leader of this group. He does his own thing on his own with Trick. They got a great thing going as the NXT North American champion right now. Why fuck that up by calling him up as part of a faction that he wasn't a part of originally? So I'm fine with him not being a part of it, and I'm fine with Hit Row not having another member just to have a fourth guy. If there does come a point where someone makes sense to join the group and be their leader, so to speak, then sure. Currently, there's no one that makes sense, and I think the group, like I said, works well with just them three. His second question, do you think the man of three H's will bring back AOP to WWE? No, I don't. I wouldn't be completely opposed to it. They had a great thing going before they got cut. Injuries really did them in, and I know they've done a lot of interviews talking about their time there and their departure. For a time, they completely fell off the face of the fucking earth. I know injuries did them in, like I said. They got cut in late 2020. Prior to that point, they had a great thing going on Raw with Rollins and Murphy and that great little faction they had going right before COVID. One of the AOP guys got hurt. The other one, I think, was hurt the year prior, and they were off TV for like 6 months. They got brought back, were doing really nothing for a little while before joining Rollins, and it worked perfectly. The other one got hurt, I think, and then before they could come back, they got cut. And then they didn't do any interviews. We hardly even heard from them for like a year. And it wasn't until like late last year, earlier this year, they started doing interviews. And it's like, okay, they're not really relevant anymore, but they're now trying to run this promotion on their own, of which I think they started to do a show, and then it got canceled, and they canceled it. They said there was extenuating circumstances. It was believed that due to poor ticket sales, it was why it was scrapped. All these other reasons. The talent wasn't happy. It's a fucking mess. It sounds like they have other issues they have to deal with beyond coming back to WWE. I liked AOP. They grew on me. I thought they had a great act with Paul Ellering. They fucked that up by calling them up without him. And Drake Maverick wasn't really the right person for that role and managing those two at that time. They are former Raw Tag Team Champions of 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, or whatever it was. They didn't have a great main roster run. They were perfectly booked in NXT for the 2 years or 2 or 3 years they were there for. The main roster, they were just never the same. I just feel like they're damaged goods at this point. No one really remembers them. It's been so long. I don't want to say you should only bring back people who were cut earlier this year or last year. They were cut in 2020. I mean, if the right person made sense that was fired in 2020 or prior to that point, and you want to bring them back, and they can bring real use to WWE, then sure. Like I said, they need more tag teams. AOP can help with that, but they're not exactly like one of the world's greatest tag teams to where WWE should be trying to sign them right now. I feel like there's other teams from other promotions or just the indie scene in general that would be more worth of a shot at this point in the main roster than AOP. So I wouldn't be against it, but honestly, the only real way to bring them back would be to put Paul Ellering with them again. I don't know if he'd be interested in that, and I know the original rumor was that he didn't want to travel, but I think he came out later and said that wasn't the case. So I'm not exactly sure what his status is. It's not something I'm clamoring for. I'm not sure a lot of people would care. It wouldn't hurt, I don't think, but not exactly something I'm super excited to see, as of right now anyway. No L from Facebook, their first question was, who should be the one to beat Mandy Rose for the NXT Women's Championship now? So Mandy Rose beat Zoe Stark on the show last night at Heatwave. Good match. I thought it was one of Mandy Rose's better matches as NXT champion. Zoe Stark, not exactly my cup of tea as far as like her character work and stuff, but she's done well since coming back. She's had the whole redemption story. It makes sense. She's a great worker. They had a very good match. I didn't really want to see her be the one to take the title from Mandy Rose anyway. I would take her over Nikita Lyons though. And all signs seem to point to Nikita Lyons becoming champion at some point. She is not ready. She is not ready now. She will not be ready next month. I don't know if she'll ever be ready. She probably will be. She has that presence about her. I will give her that. I think a lot of people are really behind her, no pun intended, because of some of the stuff she does in her matches and what she posts online and stuff. There's a lot of horny simps out there for Nikita Lyons, and I get it. I totally understand that. I don't think that's a reason to why they should put the championship on her anytime soon. Maybe they'll wait until later in the year. Maybe they'll wait until early next year. I don't think Mandy Rose should be champion for another 4 or 5 months. She's already been champion since late October. But then again, it also raises the question, if it's not Nikita Lyons and it's not going to be anytime soon, then who is ready to beat Mandy Rose for that championship? The problem is, looking in that division right now, she's already beaten everyone else. She has. I mean, she already beat Alba Fire, the former Kaylee Ray, multiple times when she was still Kaylee Ray. Can you build her back up for a title shot? Sure, I think Kaylee Ray would be perfect. But they've already told the story of her going for it and losing multiple times. I don't think it's going to be her. Roxanne Perez was my pick at one point. Mandy Rose has already beaten her twice, one of those times being for the championship when she retained it against her a couple of weeks ago. I don't think they're going back to Roxanne Perez as the person to beat Mandy Rose for that title. I don't think it should be Cora Jade. She needs more seasoning as well. She's a heel anyway. That doesn't make sense. Io Shirai got called up. I'm not even really sure who's left. She already beat Wendy Chu. The gimmick is terrible anyway. Tiffany Stratton, not ready. Lash Legend, give me a break. Also not ready. I don't know, man. Looking at that division, I'm not really sure who else makes sense to be the one to beat Mandy Rose for that championship. Currently, no one comes to mind, to be perfectly honest with you. Indy Hartwell would be cool if they built her up the right way. She really hasn't been doing a hell of a whole lot lately. And Mandy already beat her in a non-title match. She beat Sarray in a non-title match recently. It looks like it's going to be Nikita Lyons, and Nikita Lyons was one of the only people in the last few months to beat Mandy Rose, albeit by disqualification, but seemingly leaving the door open for a future championship match and a future championship win. I really, really, really do not want to see that, but it sure seems like that's going to be the case. Their second question, do you see Triple H bringing back anyone else to WWE in the coming months? I think Johnny Gargano, Candice LeRae are both locks. It's more a matter of when and not if they're going to be back. I honestly think they may not be back like anytime soon, just because, and he could be lying, and these wrestlers are always, not liars, but like they do this on purpose to kind of get people off the track, get their scent off the track or whatever, in the sense that Gargano had said at the StarCast panel a few weeks ago, he wanted to be there for a lot of his kids' firsts. They just had their kid 6 months ago, I think, he and Candice, Quill. And they're not having any more children, he said, and he wants to be there for the kid's first full year of life. And they could do that if they go back to WWE together. It would be more tough with the schedule. I mean, we've seen it with Cody and Brandy. We've seen it with Seth and Becky. They're not exactly of that caliber, but with Triple H loving Johnny and Candice as much as he does, I'm sure he'd be more than willing to do whatever it takes to get them back in WWE. I feel like it might be more a matter of he's just waiting to kind of get, not to get the father stuff out of his system. He's going to be a father no matter what, obviously, but like he wants to be there as much as he can now before he goes back on the road. I have no doubt in my mind. I saw the report last night from bodyslam.net. I got to give them credit for the report saying that, he's open to talking with Triple H. I'm sure he already has. I'm sure Triple H already has reached out to Johnny. That to me is not news. I feel like it's more a matter of, again, when and not if Johnny will not only be back in the ring, but be back in WWE. The guy would be a fucking idiot. All due respect to Johnny Gargano, who I love, he would be an absolute moron to go to anywhere but WWE at this point. I know I said the exact opposite 6 months ago, but like now that Triple H is running the show, the man that he was so loyal to for so long, why would he go anywhere else? NXT is not an option. He was there for almost a decade. No thank you. The main roster is what makes the most sense. In AEW, he would be just another guy. I promise you. If he came in 6 months ago, he might have had a chance to be a real singles contender. But even then, I feared that he would get lost in the shuffle, lose an AEW TNT title match, and then be just another guy in the show that gets TV time every other week. If he goes to WWE, he will be on Raw pretty much every single week. That is one of the few benefits of having a 3-hour show. And he will not get lost in the shuffle, I wouldn't think, with Triple H being in charge. Impact would have been cool. I feel like he's just bigger than that. I feel like he's bigger than Impact. What else is even really left? Him going to Ring of Honor with AEW? I mean, Ring of Honor doesn't even have a fucking show right now. I mean, again, he would be a moron to go anywhere else at this point but WWE. So I feel like it will happen. It's more a matter of just when than if. Candice should join him as well. I feel like the big thing with her was that she always wanted to make it to the main roster and be a success there. They were never going to call her up, whether it be because they thought she was too old, which is ridiculous, or for whatever reason. They just didn't want to call her up. And that, to me, is really, really dumb. I think she belongs in that Raw or SmackDown women's division to be given a real shot, because she's great. She's one of the best women's wrestlers out there. So I think they're going back to WWE at some point. Bray Wyatt seems very likely. Again, more a matter of when and not if. I don't think he's going to AEW at this point. He also would be just another guy over there. His shtick doesn't really fit what they're going for. Maybe if he did something with the Dark Order at one point with Brody Lee, having managed them in the past or whatever, that would have been interesting. But Dark Order has fallen so far off. I don't really want to see that personally now. I feel like he'd just be better off in WWE, who needs the star power anyway. AEW doesn't really need the star power. They have a lot of stars as it is. They have more than enough talent on that roster. They don't even know what to do with. Bray Wyatt should go back to WWE. So, not exactly 3 surprising names, but Gargano, LeRae, Wyatt, all 3 people that should be back in WWE at some point. 2 other names I'll throw at you, and I'm sure there's plenty more I'm not thinking of. They've already brought back Dexter Lumis, Karrion Kross, Hit Row, all people that make sense to be back. Dakota Kai, I'm glad they're all back. 2 more people, one being Tegan Nox. That, to me, if they do not bring her back, and put her at that Clash of the Castle show in her native Wales, which is where she's from, Cardiff, they would be ridiculously dumb. That would be insanely stupid to not put her on that show to get a reaction from her home country. The viewing audience at home may not know who the fuck Tegan Nox is because she was on SmackDown for all of 2 months last year before she got cut, but who gives a shit? Karrion Kross was on Raw for all of 2 or 3 months last year before he got fired, and they brought him back immediately as a big deal on SmackDown. Tegan Nox people would take immediate notice of her if she came back on that show and got a great reaction. They may not know who she is, but they'll pay attention to her right off the bat, knowing that she sounds like, she looks like a star from the reaction that she gets from that crowd. And they need the women anyway on both shows. They have a lot of good women on both brands. I still think they could bring in or bring up 1 or 2 more women to both shows to really strengthen that roster. Charlotte's coming back at some point. We know Sasha and Naomi are coming back. That's probably a given at this point. They could still use a Candice and a Tegan Nox on both shows. So Tegan, to me, she's not signed anywhere. I'm not sure if anyone's reached out to her or she doesn't want to wrestle. I don't know what her status is. I think Tegan Nox would be perfect back on the main roster in WWE. The last name I'll throw out, a little less likely, because she spoke very negatively about her time in the company, and understandably so, given what they put her through for as long as she was there. But Taya Valkyrie, and I say less likely, not just because of that. I mean, there have been people that have said a lot of negative shit about their time in WWE who go back soon after, so I'm not really concerned about that. It's more so it sounds like she's booked through the rest of the year. Yeah, I know Karrion Kross was booked a lot too before he went back, but, Ty is a champion in MLW right now. She's a champion in AAA. She's defending the AAA reign as they reign a championship against Thunder Rosa, I think at their upcoming Triple Mania show in October, maybe? It might be later this month, I don't remember, but they're having a match at some point coming up. I'd be shocked if she went back to WWE before then. So she's got that going for her. She's doing stuff with Impact, Ring of Honor, or not Ring of Honor, but MLW, NWA. I think she's facing Taya Valkyrie, or not Taya Valkyrie, she's Taya Valkyrie. I think she's facing Camille for the NWA Women's Championship at the upcoming NWA 74 show. So again, these aren't just indie dates. Karrion Kross was working with MLW, not regularly, but he was doing some MLW stuff. Beyond that, he really wasn't working with any major promotions. Taya Valkyrie is. So I'd be surprised if she goes back anytime soon. But from the times that I talked with her, she spoke very highly of Shawn Michaels and Triple H, who are now running the show on NXT Raw and SmackDown without Vince McMahon involved. So I think they should give her another shot. She was there for all of 6 months. I think she got hired before she was fired by that company, which is ridiculous. And her husband as well. I know John Morrison, again, he might be a little less likely. They've already hired him twice. He didn't get fired the first time. He left on his own. But to go back for a third stint, then it's like, all right, at that point, it's just your own fault if it doesn't work out. But I think John Morrison and Taya would be a great pairing on the main roster. Why they never did that originally, I don't know. That made no sense to me to not do that. But anyway, Taya should not be in NXT. I enjoy NXT. It's not what it once was, but I enjoy NXT sometimes. And even with what they're currently going for with that brand, she should have never been in NXT in the first place. She really should have reported right to the main roster and done something with John Morrison. And they can do that now. Bring them back, either as faces, probably heels, preferably heels, and replicate that success from Impact and Lucha Underground. That's what I would do. At Thomas_B96, he sent this question, I think, a week and a half ago, so I apologize to Thomas for not getting to it sooner. But his question was, what interest level do you think, if any, Brock Lesnar has dropped since Vince McMahon's abrupt retirement? Do you anticipate him being interested in staying around without him? I do. I know Brock had walked out of SmackDown reportedly the night Vince announced his quote-unquote retirement. It was really a resignation, but officially, apparently it's a, retirement. That was the words, those were the words that he used. So he retires. Brock walks out of SmackDown that night, presumably upset over what's gone down, over Vince leaving. Listen, if Brock doesn't want any part of the company because he's upset with the way that Vince was basically forced out, then fucking leave, because Vince had no business being there creatively anyway, and the reason why he was forced to leave, not just, it's like the guy's out of touch and whatever, which is the reason why we've all wanted him out anyway. It's not even just a matter of that. Vince had to go. With everything that has come out about Vince McMahon in the last 2 months alone, the guy had to go. He had to fucking go. He should have gone anyway, but this really expedited the process. And if Brock doesn't see that, that's an issue. But listen, I don't think Brock's going anywhere. He came back to work that night. He worked SmackDown the next week. He worked SummerSlam. They had a great match. He didn't win, thank God. Honestly, if Brock doesn't come back, that's fine. I think if that's the last Brock Lesnar match we ever see, I mean, I wish it got a bit more fanfare as far as it being the final Brock match that we know, but sometimes people have their last match, we don't really know it until after the fact. And it's not due to an injury, it more has to do with he may not want to work with WWE, Vince isn't there, which, listen, I think if they continue paying him what he was getting before, and if he's still treated like a big, it's not like he's working main event, you know? He may not be given the World Championship again, which would be a positive, and if he has an issue with that, then fuck off. Don't be a mark. But still, I think Brock can bring value, absolutely. Brock had one of his best runs ever with the Cowboy Brock stuff from SummerSlam of last year to SummerSlam of this year. That would be the perfect way to cap it off if he never comes back, and that was the final Brock Lesnar match we ever got, because that match was amazing with Roman at SummerSlam. I really, really enjoyed it. The issue also is, what do you bring him back for? And we said this on WrestleRant Radio about a week or two ago. There really is no obvious direction for Brock Lesnar. I doubt he goes for the mid-card championships. We only have one top title. I do not want to see him going for that championship again. And why even would he anyway? He lost to WrestleMania. He lost the rematch at SummerSlam. Why the fuck would he come back and get a championship shot logically anyway? I don't think Triple H would do that. Brock at this point should be an attraction wrestler. You bring him in to wrestle attraction matches against people like Bobby Lashley, Gunther. Brock should probably win his next match. I don't really want him beating Gunther, to be honest with you, but, you know, it's a match at some point I'd like to see. Bringing him in to, like, is it worth paying Brock as much money as they do to bring him in and beat a Dolph Ziggler on a day one pay-per-view? I know they did that with Goldberg a few years ago, but Brock is probably getting paid more than Goldberg. I'm almost sure of it. So, I don't know, man. I don't really know if that's something they want to do. So, honestly, at this point, do not bring Brock back. And he does have value to WWE. Don't bring him back unless they have something concrete for him to do that makes sense and doesn't take away from other talent. He probably should win his next match, but if he's coming in and beating Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship and Gunther never gets his win back, then no thanks. Him beating Bobby Lashley may not be the worst thing, but Bobby is so hot right now, it probably wouldn't do anyone any favor. So again, do not bring him back unless it makes sense to do so. And if Brock has an issue with coming back because Vince isn't at the helm, then fucking deal with it, go home, or come to work. It really doesn't make much of a difference to me. But I think Brock, even without Vince involved, will still work with WWE, still work in WWE, because from what it sounds like, he doesn't have a bad relationship with Triple H. He's more of a Vince guy. But, you know, he did work the other matches and appearances after Vince had left. So, he's at least a good businessman from that standpoint. And if he's not back, then so be it. Let's see. Next question from @noob_n_co1991. What are your thoughts on the NWA 74 match card? To me, it's nothing but a 5-match card, that being the Tables match, Burke Invitational, NWA Women's title match on both nights, and the NWA World title match. To me, it's not even that. I mean, the card for this show is just fucking abysmal. NWA, I still watch it. I still give it a chance. It's not a good product. And it seemed like they were kind of getting better earlier, you know, late last year, earlier this year. They were putting on some solid shows. Just the weekly shows are not good. The build for this show has been terrible. They're not doing Empower again. Instead, they're doing 2 different days of NWA 74. For a roster as thin as it is in NWA, to have a 2-night event, to me, is a very bad idea. I'm not really sure why they're doing that. Matt Cardona, I guess, is wrestling on that show, which is good. But, like, the main event alone, dude. The main event alone of Trevor fucking Murdoch, who I don't mind, honestly. I think he works well in his role. He's got a good story. They built him up well. They kind of fucked his character arc by having him drop the title, then getting it back as like a tweener. It's really random. He definitely should not be champion right now. To me, he's not exactly a spring chicken, but I'd rather see the Pope as world champion. The Pope is great. And the Pope never got a world title run. He's got a couple of opportunities, lost every one. Whatever. That really should be the main event for this show. Instead, it's Murdoch defending against fucking Tyrus, who is a terrible wrestler and has no value at all. Okay, he's on Fox News. Who gives a shit? Who fucking cares? Oh, he wrote a book? Who gives a fuck, dude? How many wrestling fans actually read this man's book? To be completely honest here, to be completely transparent, how many people read this man's book? How many people give a shit about Tyrus in 2022? I know I don't. And that's coming from someone who was one of the few people who was a Tyrus Brodus Clay fan a few years ago. When I say few, we're going back almost a decade. But I enjoyed his work in WWE. I enjoyed the Funkasaurus stuff. I gave him a chance by the end. He got fired. And then he went to Impact, did some okay stuff over there. And then he joined NWA, and it's been all downhill ever since. The man can barely walk, let alone wrestle. He's fucking terrible. So the main event on paper looks awful. I understand the story they're trying to tell. I really do not care about Bully Ray versus Mike Knox. I don't give a fuck about Mike Knox. I don't really give a fuck about Bully Ray in the ring in 2022. I mean, the table stipulation makes it somewhat interesting. I really still don't care. The Burke Invitational, don't really care. Camille and Taya Valkyrie has my attention. Davey Richards being on the show and defending the, the National Openweight Championship from MLW, that's pretty cool. But that's 1 or 2 matches out of, 15 on 2 nights? So, no, the card looks like on paper it sucks. Not a great indicator for the NWA's immediate future. Their second question here. I brought up 5 wrestlers who will not benefit in the Triple H era of WWE. Now, which superstars will benefit in the Triple H era of WWE? He listed Nakamura, Hit Row, Io Sky, Asuka, Sasha Banks, and Naomi, and Cody Rhodes. I think they'll all benefit. I don't think any one of those people is going to do worse. I don't see Asuka being this... I think the days of her being at the peak of that women's division in either show are over, just because they've done everything there is to do with her. She's got lengthy title reigns. I don't even really want to see Asuka as champion again, to be honest with you. They could use her better. She could benefit from ditching the dumb face paint shit and the acting all kooky crap. I think that shit is garbage. She could benefit in that way. Io Sky for sure should be a star under Triple H's watch. Hit Row should do well. Nakamura, same thing. I feel like, not that he's damaged goods completely, but I feel like the days of him either being WWE champion or getting a meaningful mid-card reign are probably over. He's over with the audience with his theme song and whatever and can do well. But I feel like him winning a Rumble again or doing anything along those lines are probably over. That ship sailed a few years ago. It's just the bloom is off the rose at that point. Banks and Naomi should do well, and Cody Rhodes I think should do well when it comes back. So I agree with everyone that you mentioned, in addition to everyone we've seen featured recently on WWE TV. Ricochet, same thing. The bloom might be off the rose at this point. He's been Intercontinental Champion, U.S. Champion for some brief reigns. He's been booked so poorly, it's really hard to care, but nothing could be worse than what he was doing previously, which was nothing. He wasn't even on the show after he lost the Intercontinental Championship, so I feel like Triple H is going to use him a bit more in this Baron Corbin feud. Corbin should hopefully do better than he was doing before. He wasn't doing terribly, but ditch the happy Corbin shit, make him a killer again, or at least attempt to. Baszler should be benefiting, hopefully. Ciampa, obviously, among others. So I think almost anyone can really benefit from Triple H being in charge. The list is very small of people who I think will have their push taken away or, really on a smaller scale now. People like Omos or Veer, which is unfortunate because I like Veer, but Omos I don't really see him going as far under Triple H as he would have probably with Vince, and that's for the better because Omos is not good in the ring. Ezekiel, that whole shit, they're still doing it. And I honestly thought what they did on Monday's Raw with the picture of the whole family dressed up and whatever was kind of funny. They'll probably not be pushing it as aggressively as they were previously, and that's for the better. But still, I do think the list is greater for people who will benefit under Triple H than the other way around. Let's see, at Kyle Rochelle 19, their first question was, is Roman Reigns ever going to show up on Monday Night Raw? Or do I just have to wait until Clash of the Castle for Drew McIntyre to win the championship? When will the championships get split? I've talked about the Roman stuff before. I won't go into too much detail about that. I do think we'll probably see him on at least one Raw between now and Clash of the Castle, probably the go-home show, like before SummerSlam and WrestleMania. I think he was on the go-home Raw before Mania. I could be wrong. Anyway, so I think we'll probably see him at least once. I don't know for a fact that Roman's losing. We really don't know for a fact that he's losing at Clash of the Castle. My current prediction is that he is losing and Drew will become champion. As far as splitting the titles, that's really the question of note here. I don't know. I think they should split the championships. I think they will split the titles. How they go about doing it and when, I think it'll be soon. I don't think it'll necessarily be before a Survivor Series that they want to do, Raw versus SmackDown. We don't even know if they're going to do that. Triple H might scrap that entire concept, which to me, hey, fine with me. It's a win-win, because if we get it, then currently, who are the women's champions? Bianca Belair and Liv. That would be interesting. And then for the mid-card titles, it's Gunther versus fucking Bobby Lashley. Sign me the fuck up for that. But if we don't get the brand split, brand supremacy bullshit, and they don't add any stakes, then, whatever. If they don't do it, then fine. If they do it, they got to do it right. And if they do it, then it's like, okay, does Roman face himself? Like, how does that work exactly? Same with the Usos. I don't think they should split the tag team titles. I do think they should split the top titles, though. I think we can all agree on that. When they do it and how, that's the question right now. We've had a few ideas here and there on this show and on WrestleRant Radio. I mentioned it on Twitter. I don't know, though, any one obvious way to do it, because I feel like every idea I bring up has a drawback. Like, oh, you can retire the Universal Championship and then, reinstate the World Heavyweight title. Yeah, that'd be cool, but then it's like, I really want to see Roman get beat for the Universal Championship first. I mean, he's been champion for so long, just to retire that title before he can lose it would be pretty dumb, I think. I feel like he's got to be beat for it. You're not going to retire the WWE Championship. I don't want to see Roman lose before he loses the Universal title. I don't want to see Karrion Kross beat him on a random fucking SmackDown before Clash of the Castle. They can't just announce, oh, we got 2 titles again. Like, how does that work exactly? Why, from a storyline standpoint, would they do that? So they have to tread lightly, come up with something creative. I would hope Triple H is already working on that. But I don't really have an answer. When it'll happen? Probably within the next 6 months. How it'll happen? That's the real question. His second question, I like that Alexa Bliss is finally doing something meaningful on Raw, but why did she say whoever walks out of SummerSlam, she's got next for the Raw Women's Championship? Can there be a Bianca versus Bliss feud, or is it too late? No, I don't think it's too late. So yeah, you're right. That is a bit weird that on the go-home show for SummerSlam, she did say, oh, I want next for the Raw Women's Championship. And then coming out of that show, she's helping Bianca fight this battle with, against Bayley, with Asuka and whatever. Now she's currently chasing the tag titles that she's already held twice with Nikki Cross. So, yeah, it is a little weird that they haven't even acknowledged that. Maybe Vince wrote that into the Raw script before he left, because apparently the report was that Vince had Raw and SmackDown set through SummerSlam. And then Triple H, everything we've seen either at or since SummerSlam has been all Triple H's idea. So I can see that. I can see Triple H, probably scrapping that because he didn't want to do that, and then Bayley's crew came in and things have changed. I would mention, though, on Raw one of these weeks, Asuka, or rather Alexa Bliss, should say to Bianca, hey, I'll help you with Clash of the Castle. I may even win the tag team titles, but ultimately, coming out of this, if I help you beat Bayley's crew, I want the next shot of the Raw Women's Championship. That really should be acknowledged one of these weeks, because she did say on that Raw 2 or 3 weeks ago, I want the next title shot. So I agree. I feel like it should be acknowledged. And there is a way, honestly, there is a way at Clash of the Castle. Bianca's crew doesn't have to lose clean. I think it would be better if they did. But you can have Alexa Bliss walk off on Bianca's team, turn Alexa Bliss heel, which is the role she's better in anyway. Give her old music back, hopefully. And you could do a Bianca-Alexa Bliss feud while Bayley and her crew feud with Asuka. And, hopefully Dakota Kai and Io Sky are the tag team champions by that point anyway. But you can do those two versus Asuka and Alexa for the tag titles, or, Asuka and a new partner or whatever. And they can focus on that, or just do Bayley and Asuka feud, or an Io Sky and Asuka feud. That would be pretty fucking cool, depending on whether they're tag team champions or not. So, that is one way to go about it, but I do think we will get a Bianca-Asuka match at some point. Because Bianca, they haven't really had I'm not even sure if they've ever had a match one-on-one. So, I would like to see an Alexa Bliss Bianca feud, preferably with Asuka I keep saying Asuka, they have 2 A names, that's why I get confused, but I would like to see Alexa Bliss as a heel for that feud, and there is a way to do that, but obviously I don't think we're going to be seeing that until after the pay-per-view. At Iwagoon91, your thoughts on Tyson, Kidd, and Cesaro as a tag team? They were terrific. Kidd and Cesaro worked wonderfully as partners, they had awesome chemistry, a lot of good matches with the New Day before Kidd got hurt and had to retire. It was short-lived, though. They only teamed for about 5 or 6 months before Kidd got hurt. And they were tag team champions for about 2 or 3 months, I think. But yeah, no, I love their tag team. And it was, like I said, very short-lived. But for as long as it lasted, they were great together. And Natalya serving as their manager. His second question. I read that Bryan Danielson versus Chris Jericho is planned for All Out. Do you think so as well? I do. I haven't read that it's official. Obviously, it's not official, but I haven't read that's what they're planning on. I've seen people speculate that being the match. I haven't paid too much attention to the news sites in the last week, so I probably missed something. But that match would make sense, though. They're doing Danielson and Garcia tonight in a 2 out of 3 falls match. The American Dragon versus the Dragon Slayer in this Game of Thrones inspired episode, whatever. Sponsored episode. So they can do a storyline, as Bryan Danielson alluded to on Rampage last week, that Danielson, after beating Garcia, wants Garcia in his ranks in the Blackpool Combat Club. Jericho does not want to let him go. And it sounds like, oh, two former WWE guys. It is a little weird that at All Out we might be getting Jericho versus Danielson and Moxley versus Punk in the top two matches, and all four guys are former world champions in WWE. That is a little weird, and they're not homegrown talent, but both matches make sense. And we never really got to see a whole lot of Danielson versus Jericho in WWE. I think they only had two matches. They had one in the very first episode of NXT 12 years ago. Danielson's first ever televised WWE match against Jericho. Great match. And they had a rematch on Raw, I think, about 3 years later. I want to say completely, like, everyone forgets about this, but I think they had a match on Raw 3 years later, right before Elimination Chamber, that both guys were going to be in. So, and I think Jericho won that as well. So that was 9 years ago. It obviously would not be as good now as it would have been back then. Jericho's over 50, and Danielson's older as well. But I still think they can have a good match. If anyone can get a great match out of Jericho, Moxley did last week, and I think Danielson can as well. They tell the right story, and it's structured the right way. So I haven't seen that reported, but it does make sense. And to me, it's a nice way to get Danielson on the card. And yeah, I don't really care what faction Garcia goes to personally. I'm not as high on Garcia as many others are. He's very good, and I'm glad he's won lately. I don't see him as a future world champion in AEW, or even WWE for that matter, but I don't really give a fuck what faction he's in, honestly. I could really do either way. I'm indifferent towards it, but the match makes sense, and if it gives us Danielson and Jericho at All Out, then count me in. Their next question. So, okay, we got 4 questions here, and they're all pretty much the same thing. At Uwagu91 asked, do you think that NXT UK will be defunct? At Justin David Kish asked, do you think that it's time for NXT UK to absorb into NXT 2.0 and give the stateside NXT more promotional depth to the roster? Justin also asked, if NXT 2.0 absorbs NXT UK, do you think the UK title should be used as a secondary title on NXT, or should a new division be made? And at Wrestling Jeebus asked, do you think Tyler Bate showing up on NXT with the NXT UK Championship, when his title win hasn't even aired yet, which was fucking dumb, sparks the end of NXT UK? And if so, what do you think the legacy of NXT UK is? All great questions. I'll probably talk more in depth about it tomorrow on WrestleRant Radio, or on Friday rather, with RG. I think we're doing a Friday show this week. So they're all pretty much having to do with the same thing. And I'm glad you guys asked these questions in this order, because it just makes it easier to jumble it all up into one. NXT UK, what the fuck is going on? It was reported about a week ago. They canceled whatever taping they had, either coming up this week or last week or whatever, the TV tapings. I don't know when the current tapings are about to run out. Like you said, I'm one of the few people that still watches the show weekly, that watches NXT UK weekly. And they're in the midst of this tournament to crown the NXT UK champion after Ilya Dragunov had vacated about a few weeks ago because he had an injury, a legit injury. So they literally just had their first quarterfinal match a week ago. I think they had 2 quarterfinal matches on the same show last week. I think we're getting 2 more this week. We already know who wins the whole fucking thing, which is ridiculous. And they're going to pretend on the show because they already recorded the commentary, I'm sure. Oh, who's going to win? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, that is very unlike WWE to do something like that. I know they don't give a shit about the show. I get that. But that is very unlike WWE to just spoil who's going to win this tournament that hasn't even aired yet. And we're not even close. The finals aren't even on Thursday. The finals probably are not coming for another 2 or 3 weeks. But I already knew Tyler Bate won the championship. I saw a spoiler photo a few weeks ago, so that was already ruined for me anyway. And yeah, it is very unlike WWE. I feel like they only did that. And listen, and it's not like, oh, Vince McMahon wanted it this way. And first of all, Vince McMahon is gone. Not saying anyone's saying this, but you could have made the case at one point, like, for example, if they were having a tournament in NXT to crown a new NXT champion, and they already filmed it, and NXT was filmed, once a month, years ago, before they went live on USA, obviously, and then we see the new NXT champion before the tournament even wraps up on TV and is aired. We see the new NXT champion on Raw or SmackDown. That may have happened before to some degree, I don't remember, but that would not shock me. It would be dumb, but it wouldn't shock me, because Vince doesn't, or he didn't give a fuck. I say gives because I feel like he's still here. Thankfully, he's not. But I feel like he wouldn't give a shit. And we would see the new champion on Raw or SmackDown. He doesn't care if it hasn't aired yet. Doesn't matter. The weird thing is that, by all accounts, from what I understand, I talked to him twice. I probably should have asked them. I think Triple H, or rather Shawn Michaels, still runs NXT UK. And he definitely runs NXT. He confirmed that to me, that he runs everything that is involved from a television standpoint in NXT. Everything we see on the show is 100% him. Good, bad, indifferent, it's all him. So I'm not really sure why he would do that if he's also running NXT UK, and he knows for a fact that we don't know who the new champion is. That hasn't aired yet. He knows that for a fact. So that is very weird to me, and that definitely adds fuel to the fire of the rumors that the brand could be no more. Honestly, I think that would be for the better. The show has served no purpose for the longest time now. They have had no takeovers since well before COVID, since January of 2020, almost well over 2.5 years ago. And the brand has been completely fucking depleted for the last, I would say, 6 months. Even during COVID, they've had some good shows and some very good matches. And, the Ilya Dragunov Walter matches were amazing. The Kaylee Ray and Meiko Satomura matches were amazing. They've had a couple other good matches along the way. But they've brought a lot of that talent over to NXT, and they haven't really replenished the pot all that well in NXT UK. They debuted Charlie Dempsey, they debuted Tio Man and a few others. But for every 1 or 2 new people they've debuted on NXT UK, and that's not even saying they've all stuck, but for every 1 or 2 new people they've debuted on that show, NXT has taken a kid. They've taken Nathan Frazier. They took all of Imperium, specifically Walter. Tyler Bate showed up on Tuesday. I don't know if he's gone officially, but they've taken a lot of talent. They took Piper Niven about a year ago. Toni Storm was already gone. Kaylee Ray, I mentioned, was gone. Who else? Pretty Deadly. They got they lost Grizzled Young Vets about a year and a half ago. They lost to NXT. So they've lost a lot of talent to NXT, which is the correct move. J.D. McDonough, the former Jordan Devlin got called over to NXT. I mean, they can't be in NXT UK forever, but it left NXT UK with the scraps. Literally to the point where the show would literally just consist of fucking Gallus, Isla Dawn, who I don't think is very good at all, Nina Samuels, who gives a shit, Meiko, who's great, Ilya, who's great, but who are these people facing if everyone else is gone? What was his name? Rampage Brown, he got hurt. We haven't seen him in a long time. So the brand is completely depleted. Honestly, scrap the show. No one gives a fuck about NXT UK. No one really gave a shit about NXT UK to begin with. The brand really peaked when they did the tournament about over 5 years ago, which is crazy to think about. It makes me feel old. I was still doing my undergrad in college at that point. But they had a great tournament, and that was really the peak of the brand. It was just never the same after that. It took them a long time to get that show going. By that point, no one really cared. And again, the brand has done some good stuff. They were one of the better weekly shows at one point in 2018, 2019 specifically. To me, as a show, was the peak of NXT UK. And then they lost some talent, and then COVID happened, and it was all over. And they've gotten crowds back since then. They've lost crowds, and they got them back, and the crowds aren't really energetic, and the shows aren't really good. The talent that's left isn't great overall. To me, I agree. I would scrap it. I would merge it with NXT. I don't know how many of those people can come over to NXT, either live in Orlando full time or fly over, whatever. I don't really give a fuck about Gallus. I know you do, Justin, but I don't really give a fuck about them. But Blair coming over would be great. She's a really good women's wrestler. And, Tyler Bate is great. He never really got... The fact he was still in NXT UK, to me, is stupid. I mean, Tyler Bate, I know he had some... I think he was involved in the speaking out stuff a few years ago, and which is an issue. I'm not really sure if that was ever cleared up or not. I mean, then I say like it's criminal that, no pun intended, I guess. Poor choice of words. It's like, oh, you can't call him over to NXT UK or call him over to NXT due to that. They called over J.D. McDonough, the former Jordan Devlin. He was very much involved in the speaking out stuff, and Shawn Michaels apparently turned a blind eye to that and brought him over to NXT. So if he can be called over and be put in an NXT title match right out of the gate, I can't see why Tyler Bate cannot have the similar treatment. I mean, the guy is great, and he had one of his better years in 2019, 2020, when he was having great matches with people like Walter and Jordan Devlin and whatever. So anyway, I know this is a long answer, but this is my main topic of discussion for this episode. Get rid of the brand. It's one less thing for me to watch anyway, personally. There's no takeovers. The show is not good. Take whatever top talent you have from that show and put them in NXT. And they already got rid of all the other NXT branches a while ago, like the NXT Japan branch, which was never a show, but like it sounded like they were doing that whole expansion thing, and they've since gotten rid of it. The UK scene is not what it once was. They wanted to capitalize on it a few years ago. At this point, it serves no purpose. It sounds like even Triple H and Shawn don't give a shit about that show anymore. Take whatever top talent is left from that brand, put them in NXT, and no, I don't think they need to keep the NXT UK title despite the prestige that it has. I don't think they need to keep the any of the NXT UK titles, the Heritage Cup, the women's title, the tag titles, even the top title. I would get rid of all of them because I feel like you then run into an issue of what AEW has where they have almost too many titles. And yeah, they have a lot of people in NXT, but you talk about the depth on NXT, I don't really think they have too much of a depth issue. I watched Heatwave last night. They have a lot of great talent. They have a lot of green talent, but there's a lot of established talent as well who can go out there and have great matches. They have enough talent. Bringing in more talent isn't really the issue. I would not bring in Isla Dawn to NXT. I don't think she's very good, honestly anyway. So I wouldn't bring in people like her or, Gallus, I guess, is already here, but, a few other people from that show. I'm thinking, I don't really give a fuck about these people. I don't really, like Nina Samuels, I don't really think needs to be in NXT. I'm not saying get rid of her. I'm not really sure what her role would be. But yeah, I don't think you need another division. I don't think you need another championship. They were kind of already doing that a few years ago before NXT UK got its own show. They were having occasional defenses of that championship on NXT. But again, they were doing that with the Cruiserweight division, and that didn't really mean anything, and they gave up on that a little while later. Just do the same thing with the UK title. It's had a great run. Like, they've only had a few different champions. I think 4 people to hold that championship in the last 5 years, which is wild, is Tyler Bate, Ilya Dragunov, Walter, and Pete Dunne. And 3 of those men had year-long reigns, and Tyler Bate is now a 2-time champion, as we found out on Tuesday. So I would get rid of the championship. I would do a unification match, him and Tyler Bate. They could do a Worlds Collide show. That's kind of what they teased last night. But it ultimately should lead to, the brand being absorbed into NXT and to get rid of those championships and to unify them with the current titles we already have in NXT. So I think that answers all the questions you guys had here at the end. No new division. Bring the talent over to NXT. I already mentioned that. Secondary title, they don't need it. They already have the North American Championship. They had another secondary title in the Cruiserweight title, and it meant nothing. So, no, they don't need another secondary championship. And as far as the legacy of NXT UK, I forgot to mention that from Matt Wrestling Jeebus. What is the legacy of NXT UK? Honestly, and this is coming from someone who has watched the show regularly for the last 4 years, it's hard to say because not a lot of other people have seen the show. I feel like the legacy of NXT UK will be this. It was a brand that had a lot of good talent, a lot of great wrestling, but was never really given a chance to be much more than that due to the lack of exposure it had. And I don't think it's a case of where, if the brand didn't exist, then nothing would really change. Who would really care? I don't think it's a case of that at all. I think with more exposure and just a better platform, and if WWE gave more of a shit about the show, it probably would have had more success and more people would be watching. Not a lot of people were watching the show from the get-go anyway because they never really gave it proper exposure. Like, they gave the original tournament exposure. They put the fucking champion on Raw a couple times. Pete Dunne was on Raw while UK champion. Tyler Bate was on Raw while UK champion, among other shows. They put them on 205 Live, and who gave a shit about 205 Live at that point? But it's a very similar thing to 205 Live, and honestly even more so, where no one really watched 205 Live. What's the legacy of that show? Same thing. A lot of good wrestling, storylines, matches, created stars, and that's really the legacy of that show and NXT UK, where it's a lot more important than people think, and NXT UK even more so than 205 Live. The creation of stars. 205 Live gave us Mustafa Ali, it gave us Buddy Murphy, Buddy Matthews now in AEW, Cedric Alexander, and a lot of other people came from that show first before going to Raw and SmackDown and having success. And I say NXT UK more so because it feels like even more stars came out of NXT UK than 205 Live. The current Intercontinental Champion was the NXT UK Champion for well over 2 years. We would have never gotten Walter in WWE, I'm telling you right now, if it wasn't for NXT UK. Because Walter's big thing was that he wanted to continue living in, at that point, overseas, not want to move here to the States, and he had no interest in a run on the main roster, or even in NXT because he didn't want to move. that wasn't the case. That didn't really change until about a year ago, even less than that, I think. So thanks to that, we now have Walter, on the main roster due to NXT UK. That brand allowed him to continue living over there, but while also wrestling under the WWE umbrella. So we don't really have that with NXT UK. That certainly was not the case, or with NXT itself. That certainly is not the case with the main roster either. So we got Walter because of NXT UK. We got Pete Dunne out of NXT UK, a big name already on the UK indie scene. How much success would he have had going into NXT without NXT UK? Probably quite a bit. But NXT UK gave him a great platform to really hone his skills before arriving on NXT full-time a few years ago and now on SmackDown. He stemmed from NXT UK. Toni Storm, who's probably about to become the next AEW Women's World Champion, she also got her start in NXT UK. And, a few of these stars from NXT UK are now in AEW, her being probably the most notable one. Actually, I'm not really sure how many other NXT UK stars are in, I was going to say Aleister Black, but he wasn't really part of NXT UK. He was more so NXT, obviously. But he was on that takeover show, or that NXT UK special, that tournament special 5 years ago, as was Neville. But anyway, I'm not sure how many other NXT UK stars are in AEW aside from just her. But yeah, she's one of them, where she got her start and became champion in NXT UK. And it led to her having success in NXT a little bit, not so much in the main roster. She leaves, and now she's in AEW due to NXT UK. So we got her from that brand. We got Piper Niven from that brand, now Doudrop. We got Rhea Ripley from NXT UK. Rhea Ripley is one of the brightest females, actually brightest stars, period, male or female, on Raw or SmackDown, with a boatload of potential, and she's still super young. We got Rhea Ripley out of the Mae Young Classic, but really out of NXT UK. Would she have had that same run in NXT 5 years ago? No, I don't think she would have. I feel like she really found her footing first in NXT UK before going to NXT, becoming a big star there, and then that translating to the main roster. So them specifically, I'm trying to think of other people. Those are definitely the biggest success stories to come out of NXT UK, but specifically Gunther. And I feel like we wouldn't have had a lot of these people on NXT or on Raw and SmackDown if it wasn't for that brand. So that to me is really the creation of stars. The creation of stars really is the legacy of that brand, of NXT UK. We had good matches and stuff, but again, good matches aren't really going to, we got Walter and Dragunov out of it, which was amazing. We got Dunn and Walter out of it, which was amazing. If those matches don't happen, the course of WWE history doesn't really change. But the brand itself served as a platform and an introduction to a lot of the fresh faces we see now on Raw, on NXT, on SmackDown, and even in AEW. So that, to me, is really the legacy of that show. I still say get rid of the show. It doesn't really serve much of a purpose at this point. They clearly don't give a fuck about it. The show's really not that good. It's more of a chore to watch than anything. Just get rid of it. Take the top talent from that show and put them in NXT when applicable, and then just go from there. The brand had a good run. They tried. It failed for one reason or another. Blame COVID. Blame the lack of effort put into making the show matter. Whatever it might be. The brand failed, and it's time to move on. But I do think from the ashes can rise a lot of these stars that we really haven't had a chance yet to see on NXT. People like Meiko Satomura. If she's interested in moving to the U.S. full-time, being a coach over here, she would be amazing. An amazing addition to that NXT women's division. Tyler Bate is still very young. I think he has a bright future ahead of him if he can stay healthy, and whatever issues he had in the past, hopefully he's either worked through them or can be addressed or whatever. I think he's very good. Trent Seven is definitely closer to the end of his career than the beginning, but I do think he can be a good hand in NXT as well as a few other people from that NXT UK brand. So keep an eye out for those names I just mentioned, and I do think this can be positive for everyone involved moving forward if it goes the way that I'm hoping. If it's just a Worlds Collide show, and they don't close down NXT UK, and NXT UK will continue to live on, I don't think this will boost any interest in that brand whatsoever. No one will give a fuck about NXT UK, and I just think it's going to do more damage in the long run than anything to that brand. So just fold it while you can. Take this opportunity to do so. It's been a good run. Thanks a lot. Sayonara. See you later. Let's focus on NXT and building new stars over there. And, just making the most of the roster we have there currently. They have a good roster, but it would be that much stronger with the likes of Tyler Bate, Meiko Satomura, and people like that in their ranks. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's episode of #AskGSM, episode 455. Holy shit. It's a lot of episodes. August 17th, 2022. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in the questions. I appreciate it. Be sure to tweet me on the Twitter machine to send in a question at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. As I said earlier, guys, quick cheap plug, check out my interview right now with Shawn Michaels. Mentioned him earlier multiple times. I went up on Sunday here on the channel, and on Friday dropping here on the channel is my interview with Edge before his A&E documentary airs on Sunday. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.